Why are there so many remakes nowadays? Remakes and remasters are popular with both nostalgic fans and new audiences that never played the original, whilst being low risk for developers due to the original's track record of success, and they help to fill the gap between major releases due to the long development time of modern AAA games. There's a bit more to it than that though, so I played many different remakes and did a whole lot of reading to find out the advantages of remakes for game devs, like the option to outsource development to specialist studios, why remakes and remasters are so popular with gamers and what improvements they value most, potential drawbacks of remakes such as the lack of creativity compared to original games, and where this leaves the games industry going forward. Devs can't keep doing remakes forever, or can they? Before moving on with the rest of the video, I'm going to quickly go over the differences between remakes and remasters for the sake of clarity. A remaster is when a studio takes their old game and makes slight improvements to it, like higher resolution, more detailed textures, or performance upgrades for modern hardware, whilst keeping the original core of the game intact. Whereas a remake is a from the ground up rebuild of the entire game, often using a completely new engine and doing everything again from scratch, whilst sometimes changing the core gameplay as well. With that out of the way, let's go over the most obvious advantages of remakes and remasters. They have a ready-made target audience in fans nostalgic for older games, meaning there's going to be some amount of practically guaranteed sales. Remakes and remasters can be sold at or close to premium prices, and remasters specifically are usually much less expensive to produce than new titles. All of these factors make remakes very attractive for risk-averse publishers. Statistics show that remakes generally generate roughly twice as much revenue as remasters, but are also more costly to develop. This means that studios could do full remakes on their most well-known or most outdated classics, whilst remastering other titles at low cost for a balanced lineup. In recent years, Naughty Dog has released remasters or remakes of both Last of Us games as well as Uncharted 4, allowing them to double dip on the sales for those games. Bethesda have released 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versions of Skyrim over the years, and fans continue to buy them. This isn't even counting the Legendary Edition, which is just a bundle of the original game with the DLCs, or the very special edition they released for the Alexa.
I didn't quite catch that.
Modern AAA games cost hundreds of millions and several years to make, leaving large gaps between major releases. Remakes and remasters allow publishers to maintain relevance and fill gaps between new games, and development can be outsourced to third-party studios, meaning that the main studio doesn't have to split its focus. And here's the best thing about remakes and remasters for developers. They aren't only for nostalgic fans from decades past. They have just as much appeal to players who never played the original. A piece of research from consulting firm MTM found that 90% of PC and console gamers played a remake or remaster in the last year, and that 85% of those that had played a remake did so despite not having played the original version. The remastered version of Oblivion sold more copies in its launch month of April 2025 than the original version did in its first 15 months, and numbers like that can't be driven solely by nostalgic fans. The gaming audience is much bigger than 2 decades ago, so there are simply more potential customers, many of whom will be more likely to purchase a remake than the original. More casual players, of which there are a lot, can be easily put off by older graphics or outdated control schemes, which brings us on to the many reasons why gamers might choose to buy a remake over the original version. Remakes obviously represent a massive graphical upgrade over the original version. Whilst you personally might not care about old graphics, many players do care about the visuals of the games they play, and modern graphics are simply more appealing to many people. Updated control schemes also go a long way towards making games accessible to more players. With the Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta remake, the game features an updated modern control scheme that can be used instead of the old one. The original game used a very different controller layout to the one today's gamers will be used to, which can be off-putting to many players. And for bonus points, Delta still includes an alternative controller layout that's similar to the original, as well as the ability to customize your button setup, making it even easier for fans of the series to play the way that they want to. Quality of life features are another area where remakes provide a genuinely upgraded experience for players. Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles gives players the ability to reset their movement before they end their turn in case they accidentally move to a tile they didn't mean to, which is really easy to do given that the game has 4 fixed camera angles and sometimes none of those angles give you a good view of your units. The remake also includes a fast forward feature, which probably knocks literal minutes off every battle you fight, as well as the ability to quit when you're in the middle of a sequence of battles, meaning that it's no longer possible to softlock yourself at a particularly difficult fight with no way to grind new moves that might help. The remake makes it much less tedious to alter your strategy, removing the need for players to make multiple backup saves in case they screw up, without changing the difficulty level of the actual challenge. On top of this, remakes are available on modern consoles that players actually have, so there's no need for gamers to mess around with the second-hand market, it's just plug and play. Here's a list of several more reasons why a player might choose to buy a remake or remaster over the original version. Pause the video if you want to read through them all. Quality of life improvements aside, the quantity of remakes we see nowadays isn't an entirely good thing. Most obviously, they represent a lack of creativity from big studios. It can feel like we're getting remakes rather than ambitious new projects that could be the best games of all time, if only they got made. Why try your best to create something new that's an artistic step forward for the medium, when you can just remake something that's more likely to be successful and make just as much money? However, remakes and remasters aren't risk-free. Some remasters can end up being worse ways to experience the original game if they aren't handled well. Even the Metal Gear Master Collection, featuring remastered versions of the first 3 MGS games, got highly mixed reviews due to some technical problems, actually making this version somehow worse than when they did the same remasters for the PS3 and 360.
A dud!
Remakes are often supposed to be the definitive way to experience a game, but this is often not actually the case. The Metal Gear Delta remake features a new style game mode with a modernised camera and control scheme, as well as a legacy mode featuring the top-down camera and controls from the old game. It even has the Snake vs Monkey mode that was missing from the remastered versions, as well as a brand new multiplayer mode. Even with all that going for it, it lacks the option for players to use the original control scheme with the third-person subsistence camera, which the remasters do allow you to do. The remake also has more realistic but less snappy animations for several actions compared to the original, giving the game a subtly different feel. It doesn't feel like you can say that Delta is the 100% definitive version of MGS3 that makes all the other versions completely redundant. The Demon's Souls remake was a pretty good remake. The graphics are great, the UI is improved, and it's mostly a faithful one-to-one remake of the original. However, certain aspects of the remake completely miss the tone of the original PS3 version. The original was visually darker with a more creepy and brutal tone, whereas the remake uses a wider and often brighter colour palette and has a more high fantasy feeling. Perhaps the biggest change was the music that is particularly obvious in the Flamelurker fight. The remake uses high-tempo music that feels heroic and action-packed, whereas the original feels far more foreboding and desperate, which aligned better with the tone of the original version. Overall, I feel like the remake is mostly better than the original because of the many improvements they made. Higher frame rates, much faster load times, tons of quality of life features like being able to send items back to the stockpile when your inventory is full, and increased drop rates on certain items. However, the remake could have done a better job at capturing the tone of the original game, and many players, reviewers and content creators prefer the original release of Demon's Souls because of this. These kinds of subjective changes make it difficult to definitively say that the remake is the better version of Demon's Souls, because the PS3 version does do some things better than the PS5 remake. For those that played the old version, remakes provide little in the way of new experiences and usually aren't direct upgrades in every way despite being high quality. Developers can't keep doing remakes forever, or can they? Many of the most beloved games have already had remasters or remakes, but there's currently no shortage of other classic games that could be remade. And secondly, as time advances, more recent titles might be seen by fans and developers as worth remastering as standards and expectations from future audiences change. So the supply of candidates for remakes doesn't seem to be drying up at all. Whilst remakes are great for studios, they also represent a lack of innovation. Skyrim is apparently the best-selling RPG of all time, and it hasn't had a sequel in over a decade. Instead, they've re-released it multiple times. Publishers are very cautious, and with good reason. A failed $100 million project leads to layoffs and studio closures in extreme cases. If anything, it's getting harder to make a successful AAA game as games get longer and more live service titles that cannibalise players' time come out. Ubisoft expects sales in 2026 to be lower than 2025 as they feel new games are struggling to stand out. Big studios want a slice of the big live service genres for a reliable revenue stream, but those genres can usually only support a handful of mega hits whilst most other games fall away. A potential solution might be the rise of more mid-budget releases. Last year's Expedition 33 proves that these kinds of games can be very successful, and there's the potential for gaming giants like Ubisoft to spread the risk amongst 5 or 6 smaller releases instead of one very expensive title. But the AAA industry doesn't seem to be moving that way right now. I don't think there's an easy fix for the massive risks big studios seem forced to take at the moment, so for the foreseeable future I think we're going to see a lot more remakes and remasters because studios know they sell well. Remakes of Gothic, Silent Hill and the original Splinter Cell have already been announced. There are even rumours circulating about potential remakes of other games, showing that the real demand for remakes isn't going away. So in summary, developers are creating remakes because of the financial incentive caused by genuinely high demand and mostly positive reception from players. Remakes are made even more attractive by the competitive modern gaming market and the proven track record of success of the original, compared to new releases that have a real risk of flopping. If you'd like to learn more about the reasons why AAA games can fail, check out this other video I made where I analysed review scores and the performance of big budget games to try and find out the trends behind why so many multi-million-dollar games don't sell. Thank you for watching my video.